Hello everyone and welcome to Should You Play, a first impression series where I'll cover smaller games and games that might be unusual for this channel and break down their good and their bad. The difference between this series and a full-on review is that I haven't experienced everything the game has to offer, instead playing it for around 10 hours in order to get a good grasp of the game and then relay it back to you. So in this episode we're asking, should you play Assassin's Creed Origins? So before we go further, it's worth mentioning that I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game since the very first one, so I'm pretty much coming in fresh to the franchise after 10 years. This game was gifted to me by a fan and Senator of the Republic, so I thought my perspective on it might be a bit interesting for any lapsed fans of the franchise, or even completely new ones. Also, I'll be avoiding any major spoilers, but I will be talking about the first few hours of the plot, so if you want to go in completely blind, then avoid the spoiler warning icon graphic and you'll be fine. Alright, so Assassin's Creed Origins is an action RPG set in 48 BC in Ptolemaic Egypt. You play the character Bayek of Siwa. Bayek is a magi, a sort of trained soldier that protects people. Bayek is on a mission of revenge, but I'll save the story for a bit later in this video so we can talk about the gameplay. First and foremost, this is an RPG. There's a straightforward XP and leveling system that ties the whole game together. Doing pretty much anything from exploring, looting, killing and anything in between will earn you XP and increase your level. Leveling up will grant you a skill point which you can spend in the skill tree in 3 areas, the Hunter, Warrior and Seer. It's pretty typical stuff ranging from combat bonuses to new combat moves and increased enemy detection and stuff like that. There's 50 skills to learn and some of them require multiple skill points to save up, so if you want everything, you'll spend a lot of time doing the side quests and enemy camp clearing, and you can always go back to places to farm XP as camps do hire new recruits frequently. So the game is completely open world, where the map covers a staggering 28 million square meters. It covers all of Alexandria and the Nile Delta and surrounding provinces, towns and deserts. It also has massive lakes, coastlines and underwater areas to be explored. Right from the get-go, you can travel to pretty much anywhere you want. In typical Ubisoft and open world fashion, the map is littered with areas of interest, quests, traders, enemy camps and collectibles. The sectors of the map have fixed recommended levels, and if you're encountering enemies that are 5 levels above you, it's basically impossible to kill them, so generally speaking, you'll follow the main questline which will take you to different provinces naturally, but if you have ranked up a lot, you're free to go and do whatever you like. So as I mentioned, there's a main questline chain that you follow to progress the story and have the most interesting quests. So far for me, most have been pretty forgettable, often asking you to find a group of kids, protect someone or kill the guards in a certain area. So far there hasn't really been any major interesting or elaborate missions. Even the assassinations themselves of some of the revenge targets have been extremely disappointing. There's no real planning involved, and I don't feel like the previous quests let me figure out much about the target. Typically I'd expect to do some research and investigation, discover something I didn't know, find their location, their movements and patterns, and then decide when to take them out. Once that happens, then you gotta escape. That's what I would expect. However, so far it's as easy as go to the place, instantly know where they are because of your eagle, find and track them through the walls, kill them, and then watch a cutscene that later teleports me out of the area. I don't even have the rush of running away most of the time. There doesn't seem to be any interesting environmental kills or routines that you can work out like you would in a Hitman game, so it's been a little bit disappointing on that front, and I'm hoping that later on it gets more complex and more interesting. Otherwise there's no incentive to really plan a kill, and you might as well just try going guns blazing with swords and stuff. Eventually you'll do a few spin-off missions where you play as your wife, Aya. One of my favourite ones so far sees you commanding a trireme in a sort of naval minigame to protect Pompey's ship, so you can deliver gold from Cleopatra. It was over the top, it was arcadey, but it was still pretty amazing to see and very fun to play.
Heavy speed, easy pace! Port speed, settle! Now! Off the pedal!
Pompey is taking heavy fire. We must stop them.
The side quests are pretty hit and miss. Some of them are just complete busy work, like protect a woman while she goes shopping, her horse gets stolen and you bring it back. And there was one I was very interested in about fake cat mummies being made, but ultimately it just led to attacking a group of bandits in a desert and there was no real relation to the cat mummy production or seeing how they were made or sold. Others can be a bit more interesting though, with some semi-investigative work, and some with multiple threads across multiple provinces. For instance, I found a few sites where a murder took place, and I'm trying to work out who's doing it and why. And it's on me to find the sites where the people killed, it's not just marked on the map, so that one's quite cool. Most quests do involve some sort of combat, and combat in Origins is completely different to the previous games. When it comes to melee, essentially you have a light attack and a heavy attack. You also have a dodge and a deflect, and that's pretty much it. After you connect several attacks, you build up an adrenaline meter, and once filled, you can trigger a finishing move, or a kind of beast mode where for a limited time your attacks deal more damage and you attack faster. You also have a multitude of different weapon types at your disposal, from long-range spears, medium-range maces and swords, and short-range daggers and dual weapons. These weapons all perform differently and have different reach, changing how you'll play. On top of all that, there's range. You have several different types of bow. Essentially you have the SMG, the sniper, the DMR, and the shotgun. With the sniper you can actually get a skill that allows you to guide the arrow in mid-air. As silly as it is, it's actually a lot of fun to land those headshots with it. Enemies have a health bar, and the amount of health they have or damage you do is based on their level and your level. For instance, you can fire an arrow through someone's unprotected face, but if they're a higher level than you, it'll just do some damage and they'll keep fighting. Enemy variety is pretty standard. You have the big heavy shield guys, the nimble archers that keep their distance, and then normal infantry. And I'm guessing that when the Romans arrive, we'll see even more variety. The AI surprisingly actually does a good job with their respective roles. Archers will often climb high and try to get as far away as possible before switching to melee and close combat, or even they'll try get a mount to get away quickly. The combat is the same for the animals in the world, so crocodile fights, lions, hyenas, and hippo fights all kind of play out pretty janky, but functional nonetheless. The combat system on the whole is okay. It's not as refined as a Witcher 3 or a Shadow of War type game, and it tries to be a bit of a hybrid of the two, with maybe even some Dark Souls in there for the amount of footwork you need to do to avoid enemies. My main gripe is actually how you lock on to people. It seems that it always locks on to the furthest person away, and it can be really frustrating to try and switch that. It doesn't seem to want to. Basically, I'm just not a huge fan of it. I prefer realism when it can achieve good gameplay, but it seems the team couldn't do it and opted for a more arcadey hack and slash type game system. It's not terrible or even really that bad, and from what I remember of traditional AC combat, it's way more interesting than previous games. But it's still not great, and it doesn't really flow well or look that good, but the kill moves and weapon choices I think make it bearable because of the variety. Combat also typically leads to loot. Origins has a strong focus on loot. You can get outfits, weapons, shields, resources, animal goods, trinkets, new mounts, and loads of stuff. And the items you find are typically of your level or higher. Then there's also rare and legendary items and things like that. These items can then be taken to a blacksmith to be sold or purchased or even upgraded, which is a great feature. So even if you have a certain weapon that you love that has fallen behind your skill level, you can pay a small amount to bring it up to your current level. I was worried that with the introduction of the store and purchasing loot with real money, the game would force you to find low-level duplicates of items and only have the most unique ones on the store. That isn't the case, however. The store sucks, but I haven't had to even think about it in my playthrough. I found plenty of rare items and costumes, so it's really a non-issue for me, and for the most part it seems to be just additive content like a unicorn instead of a horse. There is a Roman shield that I really like, as I have a Pelum javelin that I'd like it to match, so that kinda sucks knowing that it's paywalled. Now apparently all store items can be achieved in the game somehow, but I'm not sure what the requirements are for getting them and I haven't really come across any. Microtransactions often aim to make you feel bad, so mission accomplished on that one. So the next thing I want to talk about is something you'll do a lot of in the game, and that's exploration. Origins looks absolutely fantastic, and as a small aside, it ran perfectly fine for me with all of the settings maxed out and I was hitting a stable 60 FPS plus, all while recording or streaming, and I could see it thanks to the in-game performance tools. So I'm a bit of a fan when it comes to this era in history, though I don't know too much about Egyptian culture. So it's been quite amazing to traverse the world, see the Nile Delta, climb the Lighthouse of Alexandria, visit the Great Library, swim in Lake Mareotis, and slide down the Pyramids of Giza and even explore the insides. I mean, it's just cool. And what's even cooler is though we might think that this is 2,000 years ago, Bayek himself is traversing architecture that's 2,000 years old to him. Egyptians have a long ancient history. The Romans to us are the same distance from the ancient Egyptians to the Romans. It's just mind-boggling. And this game allows you to explore the ruins of the previous civilizations and explore the ruins that we know today, but are still standing for Bayek. Traversal in Origins is pretty fluid. You can climb anything, but I'm kinda disappointed that you don't have to think about where to climb. You can literally climb a flat surface and it doesn't matter. So again, a little minigame has been removed in thinking about the types of ledges you can climb, and it's probably because it was too hard for the average person to see what was climbable and what wasn't. Instead, Origins just says, screw it, if you want to climb it, you just can, because why not? Again, for gameplay it works well I suppose, but it loses some of the realism and puzzle solving of finding a path like an Uncharted game would have. My favourite moments in the game so far have been running off and exploring tombs and houses without any quests telling me to do so. There's plenty of notes, letters and smaller minigames to keep you interested, such as finding puzzle pieces that describe locations that you need to figure out, or chariot races at the Hippodrome. You can get on small rafts and boats and whiz along the ocean or lakes, encountering triremes to sneak your way onto, or remote islands that house unique secrets. This is then coupled with finding treasures at the bottoms of lakes, or hunting and fighting animals to gather gear to craft. Crafting, by the way, is the last small thing you do to affect your character, and will essentially upgrade his permanent gear such as his bag and under armor. It's kind of a small afterthought, but if you pay attention to it, you can get great benefits very early on. I'm going to now talk about the story of the game, so remember to check for that spoiler warning. I'm only 12 hours in, and probably only scratching the surface so far, as I'm a bit of a map clearer, so there's not too many spoilers ahead. The game opens with Bayek killing one of the 5 men on his list. It's later revealed that Bayek and his son were held captive in an ancient tomb, asked to unlock a vault by 5 mysterious masked men. After Bayek claimed he didn't know how to open it, his son was eventually killed and Bayek left for dead. Bayek, along with his wife Aya, swear to kill the men that took their son's life one by one, and relatively quickly in the game you do just that. It becomes apparent that these men were the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Order of the Ancients, a secret group with influences in government that the men were a part of. That's pretty much all the story I've experienced in 12 hours, along with a few overarching historical politics, such as Cleopatra marshalling an army to overthrow her brother, and I'm aware later that Caesar will arrive on the scene to help the civil war. The overarching story is that you play as Layla Hassan, an ambitious historian slash engineer that has created a new type of mobile animus that doesn't require the user to share DNA with the person they're animating, I suppose. I'm not sure to be honest, the game just plops you back after a couple of hours into Layla, and you have tons of documents and emails you can read if you want, and honestly I find it interesting but very overwhelming, so I haven't read much of it yet, only her voice memos and photos. The animus and modern day in Assassin's Creed 1 I found to be very interesting, holding a person captive because of his ancestry and the deeper political motivations of the Assassin's Guild in the modern world. That seems to be all kind of gone here, or at least not really set up, and I do feel it's a huge wasted opportunity. But they might be doing more with it later in the game, so I'm not too sure just yet. Generally speaking, the story is fairly interesting. I want to see where the Order of the Ancients plot goes, and clearly it'll have something to do with setting up the Assassin's Creed, as this is the origin story. I also love the idea of Pompey and Caesar arriving in Egypt, so I can't wait to get to that bit. But the story is really fragmented over a long period of time, so it can be hard to keep up with what's going on at times. So that's pretty much it for Assassin's Creed Origins. I honestly think it's a really good game, but I don't feel like it does any one thing exceptionally well, except perhaps the world itself. It's beautiful and expansive and mysterious and is incredible to explore. I find myself drawn back to it over and over again, for the world and the stories within it. The gameplay has some fun moments and the lure of leveling up and getting items feels well balanced, but I just wish it was a bit more grounded in the world it's portraying. The game is arcadey. You have a magical eagle that can see through walls. You can climb anything, and assassinations don't have any personality, and the combat is extremely gamey with levels and health bars and all that stuff. But I keep going back, and I do enjoy it. I just think I'd enjoy it a hell of a lot more if they just grounded it. So should you play Assassin's Creed Origins? I think if you have an interest in Egypt or this era in general, then absolutely. If you're looking for a strong open world action RPG, there are better offerings on the market right now, but this is still a good game in its own right, and it tells a unique story in a very unique setting. If you're all about realism and stealth, then I'd probably say give it a miss or wait for a sale. It seems the game has lost touch with its roots. If you watch the trailer for the first game, there's no blending into the crowd, there's no big event assassinations, and there's no escape situations. It seems they rebooted the franchise in a different direction that aims to copy other franchises' successes and play it safe. It's a shame, because I think they could really elevate themselves past those other games if they could just find some gameplay to portray realism. If you forget that this is an Assassin's Creed game, then it just becomes an alright video game set in Egypt, and that's pretty much what it is. So thank you very much for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments below, and let me know what you think of the game and the direction of the franchise. Full-on reviews and smaller previews like this one are supported by an amazing dedicated group on Patreon. If you want to support this channel and help decide what games we cover, consider checking it out. Thank you very much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one.